but we,
Probably on microphone right now.
well, he's going over a year now.
Okay. Well, it was really nice to see Logan.
Yeah, he's trying to get his restaurant. So we can get out of the Hofbräu. He hates the Hofbräu. He
Oh.
wants to do his own stuff. He doesn't want to be old and funky like us. You know? He wants new, modern.
Fresh start.
His whole theme is fresh and sexy. Bruschetta. I said, well, it's going to be tough on your burger joint, you know, with your 8 burgers. But he wants to grind his own meat. And blah, blah, blah. I haven't really been working there this summer. I've been working down on.
Well, they need 5
By
votes.
the other day, I usually come out at 5.
I'm calling the
But
order.
I had considered that.
See
I'm
it.
calling the order.
9:01.
I know, I said we're gonna,
Oh.
and then when I said we got a minute, we're running
Yeah,
late.
there's always stuff. We ordered a bunch of signs.
Let our staff
yeah.
get settled.
Oh, okay.
Built the bar yesterday, and that's not quite done, but it's all framed in. And the insulation, and get the bar in, then I can call for occupancy for.
I can never spell that right.
Since day one, all the trial balance, we need that.
Alrighty, folks, we're about 2 minutes late. It's 9:02. We're gonna call this meeting to order. We're gonna start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Bonnie, if you do roll call, please.
McAllister,
Here.
Flynn,
Here.
Walter,
Here.
Spence,
Here.
Henschel, Nelson, Andrews,
Here.
Morris, Seifert.
Here. Thank you. First public comment. Bonnie, when you're ready.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provisions of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board may state his or her name and township or district. Providing a specific address is not recommended. Persons may address the board on matters or issues which are relevant and germane to county government as determined by the chairperson. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, allow an additional opportunity or time to speak if determined germane and necessary to the discussion. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Order of Business. However, public comment may be received during the meeting when a specific agenda topic is scheduled for discussion by the board. Prior to the first public comment, the chairperson will indicate the topics on the agenda for which public comment will be accepted. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson. The board shall not comment or respond to a person who is addressing the board. Silence or non-response from the board should not be interpreted as disinterest or disagreement by the board. Please be respectful and refrain from personal or political attacks.
Thank you. We're going to suspend the whole raise your hand and pass me a note thing. Anybody that's interested in speaking, please walk to the podium. Please, just walk right on up. Announce yourself, who you are, into the microphone.
Lower this, right, so you can hear me? Hi, Dave Friedman. I'm a resident of Garfield. I'm the chair of the Prevention Council. I'm also the appointee to the subcommittee of NMRE. Everybody knows Northern Michigan. And I'm recently appointed, it's too tall, the Northern Michigan Regional Entity. I'm on the board as well now. I have a few comments, and I hope not to delay any further action on this. So my first comment is this has been, since I was in the middle of this in a treatment orientation many years ago when this happened, we are now 2 or 3 years into our process, and the emergency has not abated. It's abated some. We're doing better on overdose. Okay, overdoses, I believe, are down about 20%. So we've done some good work there, but there's other things. In reading the plan, I came up with a couple things I wanted to share, and I really do not want to delay the decisions any longer because it looks like the earliest the money will get to out is late in fall or December or maybe next year. So, let me find my notes so I don't miss any of my points. Okay, the document states that substance use is a chronic condition. I would submit that chronic and recurring needs to be in the document, because chronic and recurring is what the disease is. Second point, the document does not appear to address emergent issues. And again, emergent issues in the current fiscal process that's going on throughout the country, I believe need to have a part and parcel of how we would fund things. Because if somebody gets a cut in detox, that could create a crisis in the community. Recently, the state put out a new document that I read yesterday, actually. It just came out this month, so it probably wouldn't have been available in the development of this document. But there's a chart, which I will submit, that basically talks about the emphasis that they've seen in deciding how the state funds that have been monitored need to be directed. It's like a needs assessment and direction for best practices, I guess you might call it. And the 4 areas are now primary prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery support. And I believe recovery support was mentioned in the document, but it wasn't, a primary concern. Recovery support addresses the first thing where I said recurring. Because it's a recurring disease, recovery support, either in the workplace or in the community or through NA or other means, is a very important piece of a chronic recovering disease. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments? All righty, we're going to move right along to approval of the agenda. Have a motion?
Motion to approve the agenda is presented.
Second.
Sweet. A motion to approve the agenda is presented by Commissioner Walter, seconded by Commissioner Flynn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Thank you. On to our discussion why we're here today.
So if I could please
Please
provide
do.
just a update on the funds that we've received. So good news is after this agenda was published and after the close of business Friday, the county received 6 wire transfers
Fantastic.
from the funds administrator, Brown and Greer. And so we've now added $320,341.90. So just over $320,000, which brings our total amount received to date over $1.9 million. And we don't have a final trial balance in MyGTC yet, so I don't have an exact number for you yet, but we are working on developing that exact number.
You had to guess.
So 1.901 would be my guess right now based on the information I have, but that's subject to change.
Gotcha.
The second thing I want to advise you is we were updated by outside counsel. Outside counsel will be recommending settlement with Purdue as well as 7 generic manufacturers. The settlement with Purdue is projected to bring the county close to $600,000, and then the generic genetic manufacturer settlement, that's not much. It's about $85,000 to $90,000. So if you take the approximately 5.8, add what we should get from Purdue, the generic manufacturers, we will now be above $6.4 million in settlement dollars to be received through 2040. And we will provide in an open session on September 3rd, so that's your first regular meeting in September, the necessary documents together with more information from outside counsel on these new settlements that have been announced. And these settlements have been announced by the Michigan Attorney General, so that at this point, this is all public information. So does anybody have any questions for me about the settlement funds before I turn it over to Mike?
I do. It would be, I think, useful as we are progressing towards a committee structure, and also for the public and our benefit, to have a chart that shows when the funds are projected to come into from each pot and how much they are, just for sustainable planning purposes. If that can be, I know it's a little bit of a moving target, some of those out years, but to the extent we can see when those lumps are going to come in.
Yeah, it's, I do have that chart. It's in draft form. We are starting to see a regular cadence. All the funds we've received, it's information you can find on MAC's website, but the Attorney General has done a great job with developing a payment estimator. And what we're learning through this process is the Attorney General's projections are accurate. But it's a good point, and we will have that chart for you at the September 3rd meeting. I have it. It's in draft form. Again, I need to meet with Dean further to discuss what exactly do we have right now.
And then before we get into the substance of the process, I am interested, if, just for clarity, the 1.9 million that we have, do I understand that the interest on it is being deposited into the general fund? Is that the current arrangement?
Currently, that is the case.
And
That could be changed.
that could be changed. Okay. And so I think just because of the way the funds are so irregular, and because from a sustainability perspective, I think we should have a strategy, and I would like to see those funds held separately and interest-bearing, because some of them are going to sit there for a long time. I would imagine we could even consider some investment strategy for some of them. Right, like if we have 1.9, but we're only going to spend 500 a year for the next 5 years, are there funds that could be set aside in the longer term with gaining more interest? Which is not something I think we typically do, but this is such an unusual funding stream. I'm sure it gives you headaches.
No, obviously, we'll need to work with the treasurer, and we do have a number of investments. We are subject to some pretty strict limitations on what we can invest our funds in. We can invest in the stock market, but yes, all of that is a possibility.
Great, thank you.
So, yeah, to add to that, because the spending principles are so sensitive with this money, and I find it to be really a sensitive topic because, people died, and people in this community died. I think we all probably know someone who died as a result of this. I just think as a public person, having this money go into the general fund, unless it's specifically earmarked for these spending principles that we're going to talk about today, I just think it would make people feel better. Like you said, it's not so much the interest-bearing account that means a lot to me as just a citizen, but just knowing that the spending principles of this money that's going into the general fund isn't going to be used for something that's not being used for people who are really vulnerable to this.
Well, just to be clear, we do have the funds that we've received in a separate fund, which is required by the state Department of Treasury. The only thing that we're not doing currently is allocating a share of the interest, overall interest that the county has to those funds that are in that fund. There's no commingling with the general fund. It's just all of the interest right now that would be earned or that we are earning because of these funds is going to the general fund, but we can look at that.
Yeah, it seems like there's consensus when this comes back for a vote to also have that as part of the vote, that we have that see that interest come back into this fund.
So, and then one more thing. So you said, Chris, we have $1.9 million total going into the general fund, but then you brought up the total that would come up to $6.4 million But when I looked at the settlement with Purdue, we get $600,000 and $80,000 from generic manufacturers. So I must have missed something, like I heard a total right now of 1.9 million and then
It's
a
through
future total.
2040,
Yeah,
though. That's the total.
Commitments that have come in, we just haven't cash yet.
It's not going to be all lump sum. We're
So
getting
the future proposed amount would be 6.4 million.
Yeah.
To date, we have 1.9 million.
Yeah.
Over
Okay.
18 years.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. No stupid questions, right?
That's correct. There are no
Thank you.
stupid questions. I can give you a stupid answer later if you really want one.
No, I just appreciate the clarity.
No, and part of that, Commissioner Spence, that is the kind of wild card, is that they're not all the same amounts that are going to be coming in over those 18 years. So that's what makes that planning hard.
Yeah.
And that's what Chris said, he has a draft projection, what we think will come in, but that is subject to change as well. There's not like a regular, we're getting this every year, but that's a projected.
Yeah, I see from the MAC that there's now another legislative update from yesterday that there's an additional $7.4 billion nationally. And maybe that's already on our radar, but I see that these are kind of coming in different amounts at different
Yeah,
times.
yeah, nationally Purdue is 7.4. Michigan gets 100 millions of that, and then we'll get, about 600,000 from the Purdue settlement.
Thank you.
Any more questions or comments at this juncture? Fantastic. I think it's your turn, Mr. Leahy.
Okay. And again, Mike Leahy, Health Department. Good morning. I think with that budget, we'll talk about that at the end. I wove in there, really, it's just an exemplary budget. It's a draft to show if we spend dollars, this is what it would look like. And the request to have that rolling revenue come in, I think those can be married together. It looks very similar to program budgets that we run at the Health Department. We have a lot of just using like Medicaid cost-based reimbursement. We're always projecting revenue out while spending expenditures in that fiscal year. So it's sometimes a little gray, and unless you're really living it, it can be uncomfortable at times. So with that, coming back with study session following the previous conversation here in the chambers, I apologize. I had a knockout drag-out with a 17-month-old today, and I left the house with my readers on over my actual glasses. So if I'm squinting, it's because I'm just trying to read.
Seems to be going around.
So I always like to give a little history, just kind of set context as to where we're at in the discussion and how we landed here. So I don't think this is the full history. I think this came to the table partway through. I think there was a strategic planning group and some conversation that occurred prior to conversing around this latest plan. But in regards to this conversation, in 2025, May 6th, was a funding request group. And we met to discuss the opioid settlement dollars. And there was an introduction to the Health Department and the Grand Traverse Regional Community Foundation at that time to review some potential paths forward for the utilization of these funds. May 27th, funding request work group reviewed and discussed the spend plan and principles that we're here to study today, provided some feedback. That feedback was applied, and we met in study session on July 9th in the chambers here to discuss that. On the 9th of July, we took some notes, and it was clear we needed to have some more detailed conversation, really around, I believe, the how and the who. I used those words through the course of the rest of the presentation because I like to take more of a pragmatic approach to things. And I think the what we have pretty well defined here, but I think we need to discuss the how and the who. And those hows and whos are makeup of committees, Committee A and B, and or a single committee. And then the differentiation between Grand Traverse Regional Community Foundation and a county department such as the Health Department to assist in the grant process and distribution of funds into the community. So as I mentioned, the what are we here to do? Based on previous conversations and some of the public comment we heard today, I do believe we have clarity on the what of the approach and what we are here to accomplish. You see the mission and vision are there. Those are spelled out within the plan as well. Overall objective is to improve the health outcomes for individuals most impacted by the opioid overdose epidemic and for the community as a whole, following the funding tools rooted in 5 core values of these spending principles. And those are laid out here. And I do believe our what is very forward-thinking and impactful. So I think we have that narrowed down, but we can discuss more in our discussion. So on the 9th of July study session, there was a call for more detail around the how and the who. The how, makeup of the spend committees. The who is who will be tasked with sending out RFPs per se, and applying those RFPs to actual grants to be awarded to third parties in the community and or county departments. So I spent some time on the document, and I tried to make it pretty pragmatic approach of spelled out of these are the options, because those are the words I heard in chambers last was we need to see the options. So I tried to take a step back and just spell those out. So the how. So we have Track A funds and Track B funds, right? Track A funds are designated for county departments that currently provide services to individuals impacted by substance use disorder. Track B funds are funds that will be distributed to external community partners or action agencies offering services to those impacted. And you see, we have 2 approaches to consider today. We have spending committee option alpha, which is 2 committees, a committee to oversee Track A and Track B, or we have a spending committee beta, which is a single committee with a combination of the sorts of those 2 spending committees. So I think that's an item that we want to have a discussion about today. And then the who. So who shall the county task with the process of preparing, receiving, and processing the distribution of Track B funds? Track B funds shall be distributed to external community partners and agencies through a grant application process conducted in partnership with the Grand Traverse Regional Community Foundation or the Grand Traverse County Health Department. The grant application process shall include the establishment of a clear criteria and the receipt and review of applications and support for the committee assigned to oversee Track B. So a clear differentiation here between the 2 options. I think is important to note is the final determinations regarding the distribution of Track B funds shall be presented to the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners for review and approval in the utilization of the Health Department, a county department. In planning stages with the foundation, if the foundation is utilized, those funds would go to the foundation's board for final review, approval, and distribution. So with those examples, with those items to be determined and discussed here, I also put together an example budget. This budget really is made to just illustrate what this looks like. There are no determinations made within this example budget. Those are to be made by committees and approved through the respective boards. But I did want to show what this spending would look like and the impact of spending in 2026 and how that would have an impact on that rolling opioid fund balance and how that weighs immediate impact to the community that I've heard we want to make, right? But also build sustainable programming that we can fund in future years, potentially even beyond the years in which these funds are rolling into the county on the revenue side. So as Mr. Forsythe explained earlier, these numbers are adjusted a bit. Those numbers just came in as this presentation was finalized. So that 1.75 is really that 1.9-ish number to be considered. Projected revenue total, so these numbers are to be a little increased from there. Actually, Chris, that math makes a ton of sense now, because the projected anticipated revenue was 350, and that came through, and it was 2.1, so pretty close, actually. So that's great to see. As presented, track A and B would spend a combined total, and again, I'll pull the budget up next, of 510,000 as an example. Rolling into 2027 with an unspent balance of 1.59. And as we see, an anticipated revenue of 350 to be received in 2027, bringing that balance back up to 1.9. So we could see that while we're spending and drawing that balance down, we're receiving revenue and we're building it back up again. So, I just wanted to show that $500,000 does a lot of impact for long-term sustainable growth, and also addressing immediate needs that fit the tool, fit the pillars that we've identified here. So, and then as we discussed a little bit here this morning, that rolling opioid litigation settlement balance in the budget, those are the funds that we kind of discussed here this morning about to be invested, how we so choose to do so. But that is our investment for the future years that we're not spending right now, that is gaining some level of interest or revenue on them, and building that program balance, building that fund balance to be utilized in future years to sustain staffing that is brought on to do this work, or community resources identified in a track B per se that need to now be sustained once something's been built. So I have the settlement, actually, so this is just the presentation I have. I see I do have that budget there I wanted to refer to, but I believe you may have that in the packet as the final attachment there.
It's actually page 11.
Page 11. Thank you. So I knew I threw a lot at you there.
Just to clarify, the budget that's in the packet does not reflect the 60-40 split. It was just illustrative of a random split.
That was a little bit of an oversight by me. I got a little happy with the budget, and I could have aligned more to that 60-40.
Oh, Commissioner Walter, please.
Okay, just a few questions. Thank you for bringing this back and putting all your work into it. I appreciate it. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm glad Dean's here because I think he'll know the information, and Chris. But there is one suggestion in here that, track B, I think, that might go through the Community Foundation, would fully go through them and be approved by their board. But my understanding is that the spending would need to come through our board instead of, and I think that was part of the discussion we had last time, although it was rushed, so, and I'm not sure where we landed on it, but that people wanted to be the final determining factor, sort of the way the 2% grants go, or any kind of granting, right? ARPA, whatever, that these are the proposed grantees, and that they would flow through us for final approval because it's us spending money. And that's part of it. And so just need some clarification on the requirement, yeah.
I was also, I remember in our task force, or our ad hoc meetings, that it was not, they were just going to be facilitating the grant process. They were not going to be part of the approval process. Their board had nothing to do with it. It was just, they were creating the application, accepting the applications.
Managing the committee, though.
Yeah, but I don't remember them actually having, their board having any part of that process.
So that was brought to my attention in just follow-up conversation with Ms. Mativa at the foundation, that the funds to be identified to go to the foundation, if utilized, ultimately they would be in their coffers to be invested for the Track B sustainability, and that decision-making tree would live within the foundation then. So while the committee would have input on the grant application process, and that's where we as a county would have impact on kind of who receives and what that language looks like as to who's applying for what. That decision, once the funds are transferred to the foundation, is the foundation's to approve.
I mean, that's what they would prefer, but I don't think
I don't think
that's
that's
what we
accurate,
were
though.
preferring.
Yeah,
Well,
because that
that's-
sounds more like the endowment that we said in ad hoc that we did not.
If that's a condition of the foundation being involved, then that, it sounds like a non-starter to me.
Yep.
Well, let's start with the legality of that. If they're using monies for investment, for interest or whatever, is that allowed under the law?
It is.
Okay.
It is, and we consulted with
Except the
council on
endowment
that.
isn't allowed.
The general rule is you can't use tax millage dollars, but these are not tax millage dollars. These are settlement dollars that can pass through to a nonprofit corporation like the Community Foundation. And as long as the dollars are being used for the purposes described in Exhibit E of the settlement agreement, that is a lawful arrangement.
I'm not compelled by the lawfulness of it. I'm concerned by the policy aspects. The settlement funds are for local government. That is our responsibility, in my understanding of our obligations, legal or otherwise, to make those ultimate decisions. And if we get it wrong, that should be direct accountability by us. And if we get it right, then good on the committee that recommended the decisions we make. But I am not interested in abdicating that responsibility to the Community Foundation.
Any more comments, questions?
Well, did we talk about, or did you guys talk about in the ad hoc as an endowment, so it goes into perpetuity or that kind of stuff?
Can't have it in
You can't do that?
Attorney General is against that.
Okay.
What was the original intention of having the Grand Traverse Regional Community Foundation fill this role?
I think it was because, in the ad hoc, it was because of, we did not know if the county health department had capacity to handle the reporting and the granting process of the opioid dollars.
And the Community Foundation does it every day, all day, right? That's what they do, is review, get people together to review the whole process of granting. They're experts in that. And we learned from ARPA that we are not experts in that for various reasons. We're not a granting agency, and so we wanted to create a separation, and utilize the expertise of the Community Foundation or someone like the Community Foundation to help administer the grants. But there was never discussion that we wanted them to make all the decisions about it. So is that your understanding that's the only way that they would be involved? I'm surprised they're not here today, but.
Yeah, they had they had a departmental thing today when I did reach out. We did dive into that a little bit deeper when it was said to me out loud that way, because I had concern. That was the first time I was kind of hearing that, and it was said again to make sure I understood that. I'll say that. Yeah, the Community Foundation does present some unique benefits to the actual process, right? It does. We as a department would approach it a different way, but we do the work. That's similar, and there's parallels there. But I mean, the foundation presented some unique benefits, but I was concerned when I heard that may be a issue. And I've spoken with Ms. Mativa as recently as last week on it.
So, go ahead.
I just feel that was never discussed, that was
Yeah, that was,
the option. I felt it was more, they were just the grant assisting with the actual proposal, receiving the proposals, reviewing, and then.
I mean, it seems to me that we can acknowledge that we've got other things we can talk about, and if that's
Right.
And frankly, we could even have a committee or committees created, and then that committee could decide to try to engage with the community foundation to provide some support, right? Like, at some level, if it's purely an administrative task that we're looking for help with, it seems like we don't need to, like the health, we could go with the version where the health department's in charge, right? We say we're going to go with the version that we do through the health department. Should the health department decide that the physical process of putting out applications, processing them, and bringing them back to the committee would benefit from something that the community foundation would do for a fee, then we could do that, right? It's not for, if that were a useful.
Sounds like they wouldn't, though. That's what we
Yeah.
were trying.
But it
that's
sounds
what
like
we
they're-
wanted them
Well,
to do.
first, I'm not to cut you off, but they're not here representing themselves, so we're just assuming, we're making
I
assumptions.
know, but I was in meetings with them, so
Yeah.
Well,
I'm saying-
however, but we haven't heard them come here and say, hey, it's all or nothing from us, so we can't make a decision, we shouldn't make a decision on that assumption. And just kind of negate the whole argument as a whole, while they do this on a daily basis, I don't see that we exert enough kind of control that's gonna make me happy over the process. And we all have sat here in the last, with the exception of Commissioner Spence, because she's the newbie, you're doing great, by the way, don't let me tell you different, I know it's a lot of work, isn't it? Is that we've seen all these people that we've asked for that are not in our chain of command, our sphere of influence, that have been outside contractors that have just messed it up and that we're unhappy with. And so anything that gives me outside control, we give any kind of power for anybody that's directly outside of the control of this board, gives me pause, whether they want the money or not.
Well, I understand that. I just want to remind that at our ad hoc committee, it was also told us health department didn't have the capacity, so the foundation was the way to go. Then at the last conversation about this, we heard that there was capacity at the health department, and now this, so just reminding that we were told the county could not.
Well, and I'm aware of that. My point is that we're trying to fill in the blanks that you may have heard that we haven't heard as a board as a whole, and now that is an option. I think you guys did a fantastic job. We said, hey, fix this, and you guys
Right,
did
I'm not-
outstanding work. But with new information, now there's like,
As I've said that many times, with new information, new thoughts appear.
Commissioner Andrews, I apologize, go ahead.
So I want to commend the committee and the health department and Mr. Forsyth for putting this together. I think we have evolved to a very good, robust proposal in front of us, and I think I want to acknowledge the amount of work and the amount of time that has been put into this. I feel good about where we're at, notwithstanding this hiccup. I think there is I understand that as that conversation has evolved, I believe that our health department did the staffing to bring a proposal that says, under the conditions, the board of the regional foundation will provide the final review, approval, and distribution of these funds. I believe that is in there because that was the information that was conveyed to the health department. And I believe that is the community foundation's position. Whether they are here to say it to us or not, I have no reason to doubt that that's their position. And in my opinion, while there may be some things they can do to support us, that makes that track, and I don't want to even use that word because that track refers to something else in the plan, but
Yeah,
that
we follow.
approach.
We track you.
Not a viable approach at this point, given where we're at.
Yes.
That's my position. And I will say one point, because I can never leave unsaid, to disagree with the chair on the fact that when we give it to outside entities, they mess up. Well, when we did it ourselves, on ARPA, $18 million, we did not do an awesome job. So it's not that keeping it all here is demonstrably a better outcome. I think a hybrid approach where we have a committee that's making recommendations that comes to this board is a good way to do it, as opposed to this board just sitting around trying to decide.
Yeah, and to your point, we could contract someone to help administer the grants and help with the administrative tasks outside of the health department, and then bring it to the committee. I mean, if that's what we really are looking for help with, we can find somebody to do that. Part of the reason, to be fair too, some of the discussion around bringing the community foundation in, which goes to our discussion, maybe bringing in a somewhat different committee but some overlap, as well as an outside possible contractor, is to, I don't know, make it a little more transparent, less politicized, or less the whims of that same group. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why we wanted the foundation with a separate committee, is that it was really apart from the county, and to have a much more neutral perspective on needs and understanding of community partners. That being said, I think we're getting close, so I would echo what you shared, that we're getting very close. There's just a couple things in here that I want a little clarification on.
Please.
So, under track B, and I'm trying to find where it was, but there's nothing about prevention, and I'm not sure if that was purposefully left out of track B, and why, but I see that as, many of our community partners do a lot of
Isn't
work.
that what the
I
SUD
think it
provider is?
No, are you talking about who's on the committee or the funding pathways?
Not who's on the committee, like what the funding is for.
I thought
Isn't prevention
Exhibit
specialist
A
down
was the funding.
Yeah, the pathway.
It's not the person on the committee, it's what the spending for those
What
tracks.
page are you on,
It's
TJ?
Exhibit A on page
7 of 21.
6, 7?
Okay,
six of
you guys,
20.
there's 4 people saying like 3 different things right now.
Can we bring up Exhibit A spending tool? Is that, I don't know who,
That would be on page 6 of 20.
yeah, I've got 6 of 20, Lauren's got 7 of 21, so.
Gosh.
She's always got to have that one more, be an overachiever.
I'm on the one before it.
Well, I think it's, yeah,
Keep
I'm
going. No,
looking
no,
at
it's a
spending
graph.
So the
plan.
spending Plan, she's looking at a different.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. What page are you on, Ash?
Well, I'm looking at spending
It's that
plan,
one right
it's
there.
4 of 21 or 3 of 20, I don't know. And it says 2 also, and also,
Page 2, 3, or 4.
Oh, I see, okay.
Third base.
Which,
Oh, number 2.
Those are the-
okay, so it says, so this is the thing, it says, those individuals affected by substance use disorder, those impacted by substance use disorder, both that's track A and track B, and I feel that that leaves out the prevention. This is only those who.
so my understanding was that the things that are eligible for spending are those shown on Exhibit A, which is a few pages down. So they have to meet those 5, one of those 5 funding pathways. Keep going. Keep going. There, those are the 5 pathways that are fundable under both Track A and Track B. Those.
Right, so I think we just need clarification, because the language in here under spending plan is like one sentence and doesn't really incorporate prevention.
But you want to see the word prevention in there?
It says following the adoption of the shall be allocated into 2 distinct categories. And then it really is too vague, I think, and
But-
maybe we just need to say
But
the,
this, sorry, go ahead.
thank you, that the funds shall be spent in accordance with, rather, because this doesn't mention prevention at all.
But isn't that what the section called spending process discusses in more detail? Track B funds shall be distributed to external partners through a grant process. Grant applications shall do, and then here's the spending tool.
Yeah, I mean, I just see the difference between track A and track B explains that county departments, then track B is for external.
That's just identifying that there are these 2 tracks, but it's not telling you how the funding goes. The funding comes in under Part 3.
Well, that's what it says. So maybe the first part of the spending plan, it should just be, because it's too vague. I just want to make sure that,
I think the point is, all the funding has to go through this very specific rubric under Exhibit A in the spending tool. And then that corresponds to, I thought when you get down to the Exhibit C, the prioritization tool where they score everything, these correspond there. The first one there is prevention pathway, which also mirrors the first pathway. You see that? So then it gives you a score of 1 to 10 under prevention.
I'm very familiar with all of that. I'm just saying the first section where we generally talk about what Track A funds are for and what Track B funds are for seems not accurate. So maybe we just.
So what kind of
remove that
language
part.
would you had to start there, Commissioner Walter, about some kind of language that you were looking for?
Well, I think it just needs to refer to the exhibit rather than, if somebody were just to look at this and say spending plan, Track A funds, individuals affected by substance use disorder.
That makes sense. So
It's not inclusive of all the things that Track A funds
Yeah.
would be available for. Same thing with Track B funds.
You
So
write that
maybe-
down, Mike?
Yeah, I think there can be clarity in there that both Track A funds and Track B funds are required to follow the spending tool.
Yep.
That both tracks are required to follow that spending tool, whether it's a third party in the community or the county itself. They're both held to that standard within the spend plan. I think there can be clarity in the wording to help with that.
Yeah, and maybe just that whole paragraph is removed, but I just want to make sure that people in the community don't think that that is inclusive of what it covers.
And to that, I had a good comment made to me in the building that I wanted to address, and this is the feedback I need to hear, because when you look at the Michigan opioid strategy compared to the spending tool, now I wrote that spending tool with a public health hat on, right? So when I hear prevention, or I think those on the committee hear prevention, and we talk about, for example, pregnant mothers or youth, right? That falls under prevention. If we're talking about a project that addresses substance use disorder in expecting mothers, prevention is a pretty all-encompassing approach that brings to the table those proposals. It's not exclusionary in nature. So I do want that feedback because I may have been painting with too broad of a public health brush that doesn't narrow that language down a bit. So there was some consolidation from this tool here, the Michigan opioid strategy, to derive our tool. I just felt this was a little too far out, and there were a couple columns in there that had overlap. And using broad public health terms, combined those a bit to try to help the committee or committees make those determinations. But if there's lack of clarity then due to that consolidation, we can adjust that.
I think that the committee or committees will become very familiar with these concepts and will develop some understanding of what falls where with guidance from the health department, who's on the committee, all the committees anyway. So I'm not concerned that this consolidation resulted in a limiting of the opportunities for, especially outside groups, to not apply for these funds because they don't think they fit, but hopefully they are broad enough that they would apply. Can we talk about the 2 versus 1 committees as my perspective on this is the one committee makes more sense from a couple of perspectives. One is scheduling meetings.
Yeah.
Lisa, I'm talking to you.
Poor Lisa.
I'm channeling you. I feel like there's enough overlap between these two that it's going to be very confusing to some people. Which hat am I wearing right now? I think having one committee, it's the same tool. They're administering the same tool from the same pot of money with the same goals of improving how we address opioid use disorder in our community. And I think this from my experience recently on the Materials Management Planning Committee, it takes a while to get used to these things and to form a team and to come together and figure out how we're going to do this new thing that we've, created out of whole cloth, and having one group doing that instead of two, I think will lead to more efficiency. And I also think it avoids duplication, it ensures more consistency, and I just think it makes more sense. And if in the future we decide that doesn't work, I think we could always split it, but I would rather start with one committee than two.
I think so too, and we can build in like an annual, review process and make
100%.
tweaks, especially, the first couple years. Which I think it mentions that in here that the allocation might change. But even, if we build in, like, that worked well, we'll continue, or no, we need to figure something else out.
I think that's just wise to do that. I mean, so many times, I was thinking about comments earlier made, and just to surmise them, and it's like when you're rowing upstream, you're not getting anywhere, so, because you can't undo the past. But if we build something in there and say, hey, you know what, we tried that for a year, that didn't work out. We need some tweaks, because there's a finite amount of funds here. Everybody thinks that like $6 million is a lot of money, and it is. It'd be better than 10% of any kind of building that we build in the future. Having said that, it will go fast. And people are like, damn, didn't we have $6 million? Where'd that go?
So can we talk about the people, the 7 positions? Is everyone good with those? Is anybody missing?
Let's just talk through it a little bit. Yeah, I think we should.
Can you, you've got that up there.
So narrowing in on the one committee, this was a compilation of, and sorry, sometimes when I load it into iCompass, it doesn't formulate well, but 7 task members on the single committee, hearing feedback about having county administration, health department, board of commissioner, a representative from the sheriff's office, a medical provider, a community member that's providing medical treatment for those afflicted by substance use disorder, a substance use disorder provider. That's specifically kind of broad, right? Because I think there's a lot of great entities in the community that are doing a lot of great work in different realms of the pathway of substance use disorder, and then a task force member from the previous work done by that task force member. I would assume there's probably a lot of overlap there between a medical provider providing substance use disorder treatment to a SUD provider to a task force member. You could potentially have 3 task force members also be providing those services beyond the committee. So I think that approaches a lot of the pathways in the chart. And when you talk about prevention, treatment, recovery, harm reduction in the criminal legal side of it, I think those 7 members all wear a different hat in some way to provide perspective in the decision-making.
The only one that I would like to add, I believe, is the prevention specialist, which we had in Track B, but then it's not in the spending committee. So maybe 8, but there's some overlap there.
What is,
Well, you're going to want 7 for a vote.
well, then I got an idea, if you want an odd
2
number.
Board of Commissioners.
I would
that.
be interested to see potentially, or at least explore, see how the board feels about somebody from the courts, since there is a drug treatment court, there is obviously a legal, or maybe it's somebody on the legal side. Maybe it's not the courts, maybe it's in the public defender side or the prosecutor side or something, but there does seem to be some, the only funds we've distributed to date are to the courts, so it seems.
I think that's a good idea.
So
Pretty general. I like your point that it could be.
Maybe it's the legal side, because it could.
We spend a lot of money too, the tax dollars
I mean-
for just that same thing.
I think we can discuss, I thought 7 was a good number, 9's getting close to a football team, but
Yeah,
we could
I hear you.
discuss that too.
We hear
Well,
ya.
we're 9. We're 9 and we're totally functional.
I hear you. I think 9 is not too many. And if it is, we can talk about how to,
Well, we could make 7 instead of being a task force member. You could make that a prevention specialist, and that prevention specialist could have been off the task force. The task force is made
Yep.
from all, to Mike's point, all those 3 people, or those last 3 positions, 5, 6, and 7, all of those folks, there's somebody on the task force that represents those.
well, so was number 3 and 4 on the
Yeah.
task force, so.
Correct, but
And 1.
we're,
I think the health department's the only one there that wasn't on the task
Right.
force.
Right.
Which they should have been, but, yeah.
Fine.
So I agree with that. I would replace 7 with a, I don't know, would you rather see legal? Because if we want to keep it to 7, then maybe medical provider and SUD provider are the same.
I don't necessarily, I think more is better than less.
You want 9?
More knowledge. No, I don't want 9,
Okay.
but I think more knowledge is better. I think probably I'd like to keep the sheriff's office in it, the health department in it, the administration.
Do we-
Quite honestly, so it's a spending committee, so it has to be so this committee is recommending to the board what money is being spent. And I can't believe I'm gonna say this.
Don't say it.
You know what I'm gonna say, right?
Yeah, you're going to say number 1 shouldn't be there.
No, actually, I was gonna say number 3 shouldn't be there.
Yeah, no, I disagree. I think.
No, we need a
We need a
liaison.
liaison. I don't know that we need administration necessarily. If they're going to staff it, do they need to be on the committee?
Right,
They-
can we just have a staff person administer it, but not be on
Yeah.
a
You
voting
Good.
member?
We
'Cause
have
we-
that in other committees.
We've got the health, yeah, we've got
Well,
the health department, and obviously they, interact closely with administration. I don't know that we
So
need,
what we're looking at is, so summarize, number 1's gonna replace with the courts. and
legal.
Legal.
Legal. So it could,
Well, it's either be Matt or the courts, but I mean,
well,
No,
it
Matt can't vote
it
on
can't-
it.
no, he can't.
No,
He's-
but it
he's a-
could be, a defense attorney who is in this field. It could be, there are other people. It could be a parole,
So, but
probation officer.
regardless,
or-
but, so we're saying a representative that represents Grand Traverse Courts, is what we're saying.
Okay,
Like in Track A committee, you have Grand Traverse Courts, which
Yep.
could be any one of those people you just talked about.
yep, fair enough.
So 1's gonna be Grand Traverse Courts, and then 7 would be a prevention specialist.
Is there consensus on that? Is
Yes,
anyone-
and we also want to have a staff member help to facilitate it,
Or wherever a
But
county
not a-
commissioner goes, so does an administrative staff
but
member.
not a, let me just finish it, but not a voting member. So just be clear on that, and then make sure that Matt is able to attend as well.
Yeah, we could write some language in there pretty clearly about an executive sponsor or something of the sorts from administration. We've done that in other ways with other committees so that they're present in the meetings and can be a part of the conversation, but the vote goes to those 7.
Yeah. So, how we feeling about that? Warm and fuzzy?
Very warm and fuzzy, yeah. That's fine.
still pretty, I'm chilly, but that's the air conditioning.
Starts, never mind, I was gonna say something about
Can-
swimming.
So I have another topic that I didn't see covered. I think we somewhat touched on it. I would be interested, at least in the beginning, to get an outside evaluation of the program after the first year. I know there are organizations, universities that do that and ensure that we are achieving the goals we set out to do, and bringing in a third party to do that seems like a good idea to make sure we get some fresh eyes on the process. So I would like to build in from the start that we're going to have an outside evaluation. Mac might have a process, yep, there'll be options, and maybe it's at an 18-month point to have gone through it a bit, but I think we should, I know there's an annual report in there, I know, but to me, that's not the same thing as having somebody go retrospectively and say, did this achieve, what goals did it achieve? What changes did it facilitate? And doing it from an outsider just eases the burden on some of the entities to have to spend some time
Yeah,
answering
and
those
that would
questions.
help with our just overall
Annual review.
evaluation, process of it.
I like it,
I like that idea.
I like it. Any more comments, questions, concerns for Mr. Leahy? Anyone?
So, to summarize quick, just my mental checklist going on. Adjusting what that single committee looks like to replace one with criminal legal / courts language. 7 to be replaced with prevention specialist. Updating the language to make sure it's clear that both tracks are adherent to the same spending tool. What did I miss?
Health Department versus Community Foundation
Okay.
and outside evaluation process.
Annual review done by an
Annual review.
outside vendor.
And could you address the concern that Mr. Friedman raised about chronic and recurring? Is that an oversight? That does seem like an issue that we need to acknowledge in the narrative of what we're trying to achieve. What is your perspective on that?
Really, I think our overall vision of how we're approaching this does address some of the chronic issues brought to light. We're looking to formulate mechanisms that builds program in a sustainable fashion. So I think the delivery of the service in which this tool accomplishes addresses that this issue is a chronic issue within our community. It's not going away. I think we can have positive impact on it, but it will take more than just this tool to solve this problem. So by building sustainable programs through this approach, through a long-term budget, we're here to stay, right? I think that's my concern as a public health department and a public program is you use funds to build program that you cannot sustain. So while you make a significant impact in years 27 and 26, you're not there to address the chronic issues that exist if those funds go away. We're going through that a bit in public health right now with some funding cuts that if you don't address the planning for future years, what are you going to do when the landscape changes and those funds may not be available? So while I think it's these options are great, I think there's other factors that the committee has to take into account when making decisions. What programs may have fees for service built into their delivery of service, that they're bringing in some level of revenue from insurance carriers or Medicaid or wherever, so that they're not completely reliant on these dollars. Because while we do have a sustainable budget that we're projecting, the funding will go away at some point, if not managed properly. So I think that chronic issue is addressed a bit just in our overall approach here. And then I think the chronic issue is addressed in some of those pathways in terms of that's why that was built broad a bit, because I didn't want to exclude providers in the community that may be in the recovery pathway, right, that are addressing chronic issues that an individual in our community is going through. Those funds can go towards addressing that. That was a little bit of the intention of the less words but broader words a bit.
Thank you. I kind of agree with that assessment about the future, 100%. Commissioner Walter.
This is sort of philosophical, I guess, but how does the committee and how do we know, do you front more money in the beginning hoping, don't we want some of these organizations to go out of business because their work is done, right? Like, isn't that the whole idea? And not to plan on giving them a little bit over 20 years.
If I may add to that.
Like that perspective, that whole kind of endowment perspective where you give out like $2,000 here and $2,000 here versus like $500,000 upfront, like front load it because we're in a crisis mode, knowing, it's not going to go away, but we also don't want to just give an organization a little bit every year to sort of limp along and never do as much work as they really need to do right now or sooner, assuming, they're going to be around because the problem's going to be around. But if we put more effort into it now, isn't it, this simplifies it, right? And I know there's more nuance to that, but seems kind of backwards to me to do
Well,
it that way.
this is something that's never gonna go away, first off. And it's like, quite honestly, I'm a big believer in buying results. We have, the annual review by an outside source is gonna do exactly that. But if we wanna get rid of the $5 million or the $6.4 million right now, we can do that. But I think
We
it's,
don't have
I think it's easy. I think that's the easy choice, because we don't make the tough decisions. And $2,000 here and $2,000 there is not gonna help the situation than giving $500,000 to some entity that's still been here for 10 years and hasn't solved any of the problems. First thing that comes to my mind is, what, 18 people? We gave money away last year, we have 18 people.
Yeah, in drug court.
In drug court.
Getting.
So I agree with that in a perfect world, and
Well,
believe me,
maybe
if-
somewhere in between, right?
Well,
I-
I'm
I don't
kinda
mean-
hoping that
I don't
that's what-
mean spending 6 million tomorrow and being done with it, but I also think, and we talked about this, the cannabis funding too, not doing too little of an amount that you're giving out, and because there's the administration of it that doesn't make any sense for a small amount, but also the impact, right? And so I just want the committee to
well, I believe that that's
take that.
with the commissioners' involvement on the committee. I think that's exactly the thing that they're gonna wrestle with, and I agree with you. That there's probably somewhere in between is the perfect spot to be, but I think we need to be careful. We've been very cautious of how we're gonna spend this money, because that's our overlying concern. It's like, hey, we could give it all away now, and it's gone, and our responsibility's over, or we
I don't
could give a
think
little
anyone
away and it just not do anything.
I don't think anyone's saying we want to give it all away now, but, I mean, I personally agree, like, do we start off heavy-handed and then, but not, I mean, not give it all away by any means.
I mean, but what is, so let's say we decided we're all in on prevention and we spend $1 million in 2026 on prevention. I don't even know what that looks like. It means we go into every school and we talk to every kid in TCAPS about prevention. And then in 27, we've got nothing. And the problem is still there because the nature of the problem is pervasive, right? We didn't solve it by spending the $1 million talking to every kid in 7th grade, because now every kid in 9th grade was never talked, right? Like we've just, it just seems to me that the nature of this is, you know, this is a public health challenge. It is a crisis, but it's been a crisis for 20 years. So I agree, but I also have a challenge. I mean, I wish we could do that, right? I wish if there was this magical thing we could spend $1 million on in 2026 and then not have a need in 27. I'd be very interested to hear that. I just think that the nature of how, especially outside organizations, are going to spend this is going to be on personnel. It's going to be on peer recovery coaches. It's going to be on drivers to take people to get their test. It's going to be on tests, and those tests are going to be taken for years. And those things are, they're not going to have the capacity to spend $500,000 and then nothing the next year. They're going to need those funds this year, and they're going to need that driver next year, and they're going to need that driver the year after that. And so I think it's going to be, the committee's going to have to work on that. But I do think that the nature of the problem, it supports a longer-term view in my.
And I don't mean to be the public health Debbie Downer. I think, this problem's still going to be here. But I do correlate it a little bit to the HIV crisis that our country went through, right? In that we were in crisis mode in regards to HIV, and dollars were spent to address the immediate need that was in our community, right? But also sustainable program needed to be built to then manage that within our communities moving forward, right? We're not in crisis mode per se in most communities around HIV at this time because we've put the safeguards in place in our communities to address that. But it's still there, and it does bubble up in certain communities when those safeguards go away. We see it all the time in public health. Little pockets of HIV prevalence in the country. So they're not the same, no, but I think there's some lessons to be learned there in the response to that. I think with substance use disorder, you're talking about chemicals in the brain and all of those that.
Thank you.
Yep.
I agree, and I think that addresses that appropriately. Is there any more questions or comments, so we can let Mr. Leahy go back to working for the people? Yes, Commissioner
Yeah, I
Walter.
want to address the other concern that the public brought up about emergent issues. And I do think that there is room built into this process and to address emergent issues outside of, to your point about, all of a sudden there's no funding or that, we can always suspend the process or pivot and allow the committee to help with that too. So although it's not explicitly addressed in here, I do think that there is room to be nimble despite creating a process for emergent issues.
I agree, and I appreciate, and I also think the third point that Mr. Friedman brought up was recovery support, and while the term it's recovery in the chart, it's not recovery support, but I do think the concept there is to support people who are in long-term recovery to stay in recovery. I hope that is part of the process because we know that everyone needs a place to live, something to do, and someone to love in order to stay clean and healthy. So we hope that we can provide those resources through this funding as well, or at least not. I mean, we can't do all of it, but to the extent those are keeping people that are in recovery seems like a version of prevention that's worth every penny. So I think because this is a long-term funding source, I think our committee should have some capacity to get some expertise, by which I mean I think we should think that we're going to appoint these committees like we appoint boards, where they're going to have a term, some amount of time that they spend on this committee. I don't know if that's a 2, 3, probably 3 years is as long as I would be interested in, at least initially, but I would welcome some guidance from you on, in terms of, everyone starts at 3 and then we start to phase. There's some, maybe Matt can help with that. There's going to need to be some, I think it should be structured as an oversight committee. I don't know that I like spending committee because they're not actually writing, I mean, they're distributing funds, but I think an oversight committee, because they're going to do more than just spending. They're going to do the evaluation. They're going to provide recommendations. They're going to respond to emergent issues. I would call it something like the opioid settlement
Recommendation committee.
oversight committee or board,
Well,
something.
Oversight indicates that they have oversight over everything. We're the oversight committee. So it would be something more along the lines of a recommendation committee or direction committee. I get it. Spending is kind of misleading.
Yeah, it's an advisory, right? We
Yeah,
have
I think
other
it's an
ones that are
advisory.
Yeah,
advisory, there you
committee,
go.
yeah.
Advisory is good. Are there any other things you're going to need from us to kick this off at our next? Because I think we need to the point that this has taken a long time, and I will defend the length of time this has taken. I think it has resulted in a good product, and I think that's the result of a lot of people spending a lot of time and providing a lot of input to get us here. But I think I feel like we're in a good position to get this going, but I would like to see this on an agenda in a approvable format with a motion or resolution as soon as that can happen.
Yeah, Mike and I talked, we'll be ready to go to get this on next week's agenda if that's the direction of the board.
That is.
The other, and I'm sorry, Chair, I did have one other comment. As you know, we're not the only ones getting these funds. The state of Michigan right now is projected to get $1.6 billion. There has been very little coming out of Department of Health and Human Services as to what are they going to do with their state dollars. There's been trickles of announcements, but not a regular cadence of here are grant opportunities. I'd ask you as county commissioners to continue to advocate to our state leadership that, come on guys, we can, Grand Traverse County, we played our part. We spent a lot of time figuring out a great plan. What is DHHS's plan, and when are we going to start seeing those dollars come to our communities here or communities across the state?
That's a valid point, Mr. Forsyth, and as we have a conference in the fall, Michigan Association of Counties, then we'll have to have a plan as we go forth to put a little pressure on Lansing. And my hopes are is whatever program that we decide upon here, hopefully next week, that will be the beacon for the state to go, hey, look at what they're doing, we like that, and perhaps we can get a few more dollars.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking of it earlier too, and we haven't gotten to the application process or seeing the application for somebody, but I think someone, an organization or an entity who's able to, leverage other funds, and this is, it could be, these are matching dollars perhaps, or we would very much encourage that, whether it's from the state, which would be awesome, or from
Community
some other
partners,
magical entity.
some other genie.
Good idea.
That should be explicit in there,
Like
that
that.
would be,
Bonus points.
yeah, some, highly encouraged that this would, and it also, part of that is leveraging the partnerships, right? Whether it's a public-private partnership, or if it's health department working with another organization or something, that those are highly valued.
Good points.
All right, we're gonna wrap this up. You've got like 10,000 things. Do you need one more?
Well,
had
this
a
is
thought,
important.
just,
I don't need,
Are you sure? Do we need Mike for it? You sure? Okay.
Oh, I remembered.
There it is.
Thank you. So, to the point, to Mr. Forsythe's point, I would be very interested if there is already one out there, and if not, for our health department to pull together a resolution advocating for Lansing, for DHHS to distribute funds. That doesn't have to happen immediately. We got to get this done. There's only so much capacity, but I would like to see a resolution of, an advocacy resolution pushing for a distribution of funds. I think that is a good use of our time. I know when we pass those resolutions, it does help put pressure. It shows we're speaking with one voice. So I welcome that on an agenda in the next couple of.
Perfect.
ASAP.
Perfect.
And just, I want to circle back to a point made, because I think it's important. I like clarity. So to address Commissioner Walter and Flynn, right? When asked the question if the health department had the capacity the first time, the answer was no. We are a different place. We are approaching public health differently. We have a leadership staff that I've asked to get out of some of the day-to-day weeds. We have team members to do that and address these bigger picture public health concerns that we're discussing here today. So my confidence in our team has grown over the last handful of months. I've seen us do some pretty impressive things, and I just wanted to address that because I don't like fly-by-night decisions. I don't like being told one thing and then being told another. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're all set, Mr. Lay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to you and your team.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
So we're going to go to second public comment. If anybody would like to make a comment at this time, please go to the podium.
I can be quick this time and not look into the mic. Thank you, number one, for the resolution. Oh, Dave Friedman, I apologize, Dave Friedman. I don't have to do the rest of it right, just Dave Friedman. And for the advocacy initiative, I think it's really important, and I thank you for bringing that up. That was what I was going to say at the end, actually, that we do need advocacy because the state is not spending their money fast enough. They did spend some recently. It was a small amount. Grand Traverse did get some of it. We got some vehicles for an RCR recovery organization locally, as well as some building in one of our organizations because it was one-time money. But we did get some money from the state in regard to that. But as a rural community, I don't believe we see our share, and I think asking for it is really important. The second thing I just wanted to mention is in regard to the evaluation, I believe that that's hugely important. I would have written it. I was on the first committee that talked about that. We wanted evaluation. I would suggest that would be one of the, once the committee's structured, that would be one of the first things they need to ask. They don't need to hire somebody, but you need to know what questions do you want to ask so you know what information needs to be collected. And then you can hire the evaluation person later, but you need to know what questions you want now. It's the only two comments I have, and thank you for moving this forward.
Thank you for your comments.
Dave McGram, Garfield Township. A couple of points. regarding a chronic recurring condition, I would suggest you call it a chronic recurring disease. That's what we're trying to call it in the medical profession. It's a chronic disease, in some respects unlike any other, but it is a chronic disease and it's amenable to treatment. Secondly, the composition of the committee, I know more is not necessarily better, but I would love to see you give Mr. Leahy the latitude to add people. There's nobody in recovery on this committee. It's a little bit county heavy in my mind. And I also wonder if the city or another entity said, hey, you've got a good process we'd like to sign on. Maybe there's a role for other people to be added to this committee to help with funding disbursement. I also just want to talk about chronic budgets and funding shortfalls. And for me, it boils down to a couple simple things. Housing and transportation, the two biggest needs in this county and in the region. And I think we're always going to need a budget for transportation. I don't know how much a year that's going to be, but it's always going to be there. Housing is always going to be there. There will be other grants that come along, but I see those as two huge needs. And I want to remind folks, the quick response team going county-wide, that is really more a case management and coordination of services arena. It has a huge return, so I would see those three as some of the key things that the group is going to need to look at coming out of the gate. Thank you all for your time and for moving forward with this process. And I'm thrilled to hear that there may be a motion to move this forward in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak at this time? Going once, going twice, 3 times a lady. Thank you very much. Any reports, comments, concerns? Going once, twice, 3 times. We are adjourned. Thank you very much for being here today. It's been a long process. We appreciate your resilience. I need 2 minutes with you. Please.